So, boys and girls, I just want you to sit back, relax, and learn about this amazing dog. And we have Jen that's going to answer your questions as we go in the chat. So that's pretty awesome to have two experts at the same time. So I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Lee and the awesome Jen, and we're going to learn the inspirational story about Balto.
All right, thank you, Mally. And I'm looking for the magical powers that Katie wields, because she's going to make my picture bigger and pin it. And that way I can see what I'm doing as well as everybody else, because I am supremely still awful. Oh, magical. Thanks, Katie. At paying attention to all of these screens and making sure, excuse me, I'm showing you the right things. You are seeing right now the title screen for my program, Balto, A History of Huskies, Humans, and Health in Alaska. And that picture is a black and white picture because Balto was alive way back. He was born in 1919, 101 years ago. So all the pictures that we have of him when he was alive are in black and white. And I want to solve one of the great mysteries for you right now. What he looked like, there we go, is I have a little pamphlet here that shows pictures of Balto. And by the way, guys, I might not remember to look over at the chat the whole time because I get so excited about this story. And mediators, let me know, are we doing 40 minutes? What are we doing here? They're pondering, thinking about it.
However long it takes to tell the story and answer the questions.
Tomorrow, we're all staying here for 48 hours now. All right, I love it. So I get super excited, I'm telling the story, and I forget to look over at the chat. But that's why my friend Jen, who has heard the Balto story many, many times and knows lots and lots of good answers, will be responding to you for the most part as my official museum representative. But if there's something that floats past that you don't know the answer to, Jen, just yell at me, man. Say, whoa, Lee, whoa, whoa there, because I'll be talking fast because I love this story. Here is a pamphlet that we give away at our museum. And you can also see it at our website. So if you go to CMNH, we can't see it past my head, wait, right there, cmnh.org. You can go there and you can click under exhibits and get this, and you can download it and look at it. There is a picture in there on this page right here of what Balto's body looked like after he died in the year 1933. I don't know if you can read all those. I'm trying to hold them up so you can see them, but they're really small. But that's a picture of what he looked like when he was first taxidermed. And today, on the front, see how his fur is kind of a brownish color now? And that's because it was such a popular story. People were so excited about telling the Balto story that they would take his taxidermed body out of the building and they would take it to school so kids could see it in person, in Dogson. Is that how you say in person, but you're talking about a dog? I think so. I just made that up. And his fur started to fade in the sunshine. And once they realized that, oh no, we're causing damage to this wonderful dog's body that is such a famous dog, they stopped doing that. And now he always stays in the museum, and he's inside of a protective case, so his fur will not fade anymore. Who knows? Maybe someday they'll figure out how to darken his fur again. But for now, we're not messing with him because he is the one and only Balto, and we don't want to cause any damage to his body. So that's the story of that black and white picture on the front. Now, here's a picture of him up close. See the difference? Look at that. Yeah, you can definitely tell. That looks brown to me. Yeah, I'm sure it looks brown to all of you. But when the newspapers described him, they said he was black, or they would call him charcoal, or they would say he's so dark brown that you could consider him black. Well, there you go. So I'm sure some of you have a dog or a cat or some other furry pet that has black fur that when light shines on them just the right way, that yes, they look like that. So you get the idea. Cool. Here is a map of the United States in white, Alaska in red, you folks up in Canada in kind of yellow, and then the ocean in blue. Here is where Jen and I are in Cleveland, Ohio. Well, that's a big dot on all of Ohio, the top northeastern corner. And here is where Nome, Alaska is located, way up on the edge of the Bering Sea. It's just cold up there and icy, as you guys know, because a lot of you live up north as well. And where Balto was born is a kennel. It's kind of like a dog farm. And the man who owned him was named Leonard Seppola. I'm just going to call him Sepp while we chat today, because that was his nickname, Sepp, S-E-P-P. And you can see at the bottom of the screen there's some Seppola kennels. Those are modern. Those are still around today. So if somebody knows, look, it says Rossburn, Manitoba. So if anybody's near Manitoba, you could go visit Seppola kennels. and you could actually buy a puppy that is a great grandpuppy of Balto. That's sorry, of Togo. That's pretty rad. Unfortunately, Balto never had any puppies, and that's kind of a bummer because in the cartoon movie, this one, in case anybody saw that one, I don't know if you guys can see. I'm holding it up in the tiny screen right now, but the cartoon movie of Balto showed him having a litter of puppies, and the bummer is, that just didn't happen. Darn, Sepp did not think that Balto was good enough to breed. But there was another dog that was born 6 years before Balto, whose name was Togo, and he did have puppies. This is what Nome, Alaska looks like today. Gee, it might look like some of the towns where some of our viewers live. And it's right up against the ocean, and that's a summertime picture. When I use this picture, I'm showing kids who live down here in the lower 48 of the U.S. states. They are like, wow, there's no trees. Right, so it's a very flat tundra kind of landscape, and sled dogs were so precious back in the early 1900s. This is what the beach looked like in the 1900s, say around 1910, 1915, because there was a gold rush going on. And tons of people had found out there was gold washing out of the mountains and washing along the Iditarod River and all the other rivers coming down out of the mountains and ending up over there along the beaches. You could just walk along the beach and find gold. So tons of people were like, let's go, man, we're going to go find some gold. And what would happen was hundreds of people would show up, and they would put these tents up in the summertime, try to find gold, and then if they found some, cool, they got rich and they left, they went home. And if they didn't, they'd come back the next summer. But as you all know, it's not always glorious summertime up north, right? Now, Alaska, my brother lives in Valdez, which is kind of it's up there, but it's not quite as far north as some of our viewers. But you all know that summertime is a short time. So here's a picture of a parade in Nome in summertime. This picture was taken in 1914 during the gold rush. And look, people brought horses and cars and all kinds of stuff up there. And they built this road out of wood. And what's funny is that I was talking to a musher from the Iditarod. She's a buddy of mine. She comes to the museum sometimes and visits. And she told me that she was in Nome, Alaska, a couple of years ago, and they were pulling up the wood that road, that front street had been paved with, and they were actually finding little bits of gold underneath the street. That's how crazy it was. As people were finding all this gold dust and walking down the street to go buy stuff and just dropping it, like dropping money out of your pockets. Man, it was a crazy time in Nome, Alaska. But all those people weren't there all the time. When the wintertime would hit, most of the people from the lower 48 U.S. states, they were wimps, and they would leave. They'd say, we're out of here, because they're like, we're not going to deal with all this snow. Look at this. Plop. Yeah, they didn't want to deal with that. So they just split. And everybody would look at those poor horses in that picture trying to pull a sled through the deep snow. That's not a good deal for a horse. So basically, in the long winter time in Nome, Alaska, it was people and dogs. Dogs pulling dog sleds. That's how you got all your stuff. That's how you got your items delivered from the ships that would bring groceries and clothing and shovels and all the things you needed. And in the short summertime, you'd have a party and celebrate. And that's how Nome was for many years. Now, this guy, that's a better picture of Sepp. Check out all those trophies. This guy, he got super famous in Nome, Alaska, because he came looking for gold. Couldn't find any gold. Well, not enough, and he kind of gave up. And so he said, well, now I got to find another job. So his job was, he decided he liked dogs. He liked raising dogs. He liked racing them. And his favorite dog of all time was this guy, Togo. Now, Togo was born in the same kennels where Balto was, but he was born earlier, 6 years earlier than Balto. And so over the first couple of years of his life, he was a brat. He got into trouble. There's a hilarious movie out on Disney Plus about Togo, which is all true stuff. He was a bad dog. He was always running away and getting in trouble and just being a brat. But one day, old Sepp said to himself, well, you know what, maybe I'm going to let this dog Togo, maybe I'm going to let him try it out and see if, you're saying it describes all your dogs. Huskies are like that, aren't they? They have a mind of their own, man. So old Togo, one day, Sepp put him in a harness and said, all right, puppy, show me what you got. Togo immediately started getting the other dogs to follow him, and he was whipping them into shape and following the trail like he'd always done it his whole life. So Sepp was pretty stoked about that. He said, cool, this dog is awesome now. And they became super well known all across Alaska. If you got into trouble, if you needed help, if you needed somebody to come rescue you, if you were hurt and needed to get back to a town, then Sepp would come and get you. So he and Togo already had a super fan club of people who were like, yeah, Sepp and Togo are the awesomest. So for 6 years, They were the heroes of Alaska. That was a funny noise my computer just made. Well, then 6 years later, a little puppy was born who got named Balto. And Balto's it's a famous name from a Norwegian explorer who, I think he marched across Greenland for the first time. And when Sepp named this little puppy Balto, he said, you know what, this little dog, he's not as cool as Togo. He's kind of chunky and short. I'm just going to lend him to this other guy. So the picture that you should be seeing right now is a guy kind of squinting in the sun and a bunch of dogs standing around on these wooden racks. And I'm going to hover my arrow. Here I go. I'm hovering my arrow hovering noise. You like that? Over the top of Balto's head. So if you can see my arrow, Laura is, and somebody wants to send a chat and say yes or no, you can or cannot see the arrow. Oh, I see clapping. Okay, thanks, Sierra. There's my arrow. And Balto was put in charge of this team. But the dog that's kind of leaning on him, his buddy there, that dog was named Fox. And there were 13 dogs on this team. That the man squinting in the sun, his name's Gunnar Kaysen. I'll just call him Kaysen during this. So I got Sepp, who owned Balto, Kaysen, who borrowed Balto, and these 13 dogs to pull heavy loads all across Alaska and deliver supplies to all these people coming up trying to find gold. And then when all the people would split and leave during the wintertime, then they would just help to bring supplies to all the people who were still living in Alaska. How do you borrow a dog? That's a good question. Both Sepp and Kaysen worked for the same company, Pioneer Mining Company. So their primary job was to bring supplies to all the prospectors who were digging for gold all across Alaska. So now you can see that Balto looked different than Togo. He was shorter and kind of heavier. He was strong. And
yeah.
Yes? Come on, was that a question? No? Okay. I just heard some noise and I thought Jen was yelling at me. Here is a picture of what Balto's team would have been doing most of the time when the boats would come along the ice in the summertime once the ice had melted off mostly. Look at all those people. Look at that ship. It's kind of leaning. It looks kind of scary to me, man. But all those dogs were just patiently waiting until you would unload all your supplies and pile them on the sled, and then you'd take off and deliver them. So I like to think of them as kind of like the very first Amazon delivery service. How about that? That was their job. It was to bring everybody the supplies they needed. And boy, those mushers trusted those dogs with their lives because they would say all the time, look, man, when there's a bad storm or something going on and I can't even see where I'm going, I just tell my lead dog, go home, go home. And that dog, he can follow that trail with his nose and keep us safe. Now, my friends, in the early spring, late January, early February of 1925, there was a tremendous, awful, horrible blizzard. Look at all the snow piled up on that hospital. And during this tremendously horrible, awful blizzard, something kind of scary happened. A couple little kids, and I apologize in advance. My goal is not to frighten my audience, because we are right now, in real life right now, in current times, dealing with a scary virus, right? That is spread usually sometimes in the air and also usually on the ground. I mean, it can be spread different ways, right? So we're learning to wash our hands, to cough properly, wear a mask if we're going to go somewhere where there's a lot of people. But guess what? Back in 1925, people didn't understand all that stuff. And there was this interesting mix of all of these prospectors, these dudes who had come up from the lower 48 United States, hanging out with local First Nations people. And when you have a combination of new people who've never met each other before, sometimes the germs can be really, really rough. And if you've never experienced a germ before, your body can get really sick from it. So that's what happened was the doctor who worked at that little hospital, Curtis Welsh was his name. All of a sudden, some little kids, their parents brought them in and they were super sick. And they had sore throats and they were coughing. And he was taking their temperature to see what was wrong. And he didn't think that it was too bad. He thought maybe it was just tonsillitis, which it's not too bad. So he told those little parents, go ahead and take your little kiddos home and we'll check on them again tomorrow. But here's the really sad part. The little kids died. And so the doctor was like, oh boy, I made a mistake. I better check and see what's going on. And he realized, oh my gosh, I was wrong. It was not tonsillitis. It was this awful germ called diphtheria. And diphtheria is gross. My friends, do not, I'm telling you right now, don't do this. Don't go on the internet later and type in diphtheria and then search images. You're going to be sad. Don't do it. Uh-oh, you're going to do it, aren't you? Well, if you do it, what you're going to see is pictures of doctors looking down a person's throat in their windpipe. So the part right here that you can feel when you breathe. And what you see down there, if a person has diphtheria, is this weird gray, sludgy, it kind of looks like gray leather. And that's actually where the name diphtheria came from. Jen taught me that because she looked it up for me during a class because a kid asked me and I didn't even know. And it turns out that diphtheria in Greek, in ancient Greek, means leather. And it looks like there's a hunk of leather stuck down inside your throat and you can't breathe. Holy cow, that is scary, man. So the doctor basically freaked out because he realized, oh man, I made a terrible mistake and I got to do something right now. I know, those poor kids. So he said, well, let's get some medicine. Looked all on his shelves, no medicine. Uh-oh. And he's like, oh, gee, I found some medicine, but it wasn't even good. It was out of date. So he started to panic and realized, I am so in trouble because these little kids, I'm going to have more little kids getting sick because everybody's coughing and they're spreading the germ. So he quarantined the town, just like a lot of us are doing quarantine now and staying away from other people so we don't share any germs with anybody. But man, it was also a terrible, horrible blizzard. It was so bad, it was getting down below 50 degrees, man. Minus 50, that's in Fahrenheit. That's like minus 42 or 3 Celsius. Can't do the math in my head that fast. Super cold. You guys get the idea. So cold that if you spit in the air, your spit freezes before it hits the ground. So now you've got this poor little town, and you've got all these kids sick, and the doctor doesn't have the right medicine. I'm showing a picture of the little glass vials with little rubber stoppers in the top that they used to carry the medicine around in. And he only had expired medicine, so he didn't want to use it. And what he thought he'd better do is he'd better call for help. And he called for help using that thing, a thing called a telegraph machine. And a telegraph machine is what they had in most of the little towns across Alaska because they hadn't finished putting up phone lines yet. The Army actually was putting up phone lines, but nobody had them yet across Alaska. And when you hear a message by a telegraph machine, it's in Morse code. Now, I just looked this up online. You can just type in Morse code to any search. Don't go do it now. Hang with me. But after the class, if you go look up Morse code, then you'll see these little dots and dashes. But what they sound like when you hear them, because one person's sending here, I'll put it back for a second. When you push down on this, there's a little finger pad right there on the right. When you push that down, oh, thanks, Jen. It makes a little beep, because that little gray thing right there is like a little speaker. And a dot sounds like beep, a short beep. And then a long dash sounds like beep. So if I was going to spell out the name Balto right now, this is going to sound super silly, you guys, when I do it. Look at B. It would sound like this. Beep, 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 beep. That's B. A would be beep, beep. Right? You getting it? And the L would sound like this. Where's the L? Oh, there it is. Beep, 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 beep. That would sound like. And the T would be beep. And then the O would be beep, beep, beep. So when the doctor sent out this message in Morse code, the guys down in Anchorage, they got the message and they said, oh my gosh, we've got medicine down here and we need to send it to you, but we have to send it by dog sled. These are old newspaper headlines from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which has nothing to do with the story so far. Nope. But this is in our town where I am in Cleveland, and you saw on the map where I am. Everybody was like, whoa, this is so exciting. Because the mayor, look at that, more headlines, dogs rushing on. The mayor of Alaska said, look, man, we need to get this medicine there, and we need to get it there super fast. And the problem is, uh-oh, I turned my video off. Hold on. There we go. Did it come back? Sorry. The problem that happens when you guys are seeing me jumping around in this is all of the controls are like right next to each other, and my big fat fingers are like boom, 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 boom. So I just apologize for any random weirdness that happens while I am attempting to share screens. There we go. So they said, we can't get the medicine there by airplane. And check it out. In the third cartoon Balto movie, did you know there was 3 of them? Yep. The first one actually is about the real story that we're telling today. The other 2, they kind of get a little crazy with it, but yeah, it's a cartoon. That's cool. But check out that little plane. You see that little plane right there? That is called a biplane. Bi meaning 2. It's got 2 wings. And a biplane, the thing is, back then, the pilot's head was just like sticking out in the air. And planes only flew like 60 miles an hour back then. They couldn't go much faster, maybe even slower than that. So think about if you're in a car or a snow machine that's booking really fast, right, the wind, wow, it's hitting your face, or if you stick your hand out a car window, oh, and you can feel that wind, right? Now imagine that it's 50 below zero, and you're trying to fly in that weather. Now, that pilot's not going to even survive because their head's going to freeze. So even though there was one pilot who was like, I'll try and do it. I think I can. The mayor was like, no. You're not going to do that because if you crash, then we all look bad, dude. So thank you for offering, but no. We're going to trust the dogs because the dogs already know the trail, already know how to get there. Yeah, and the mushers, it might take us a little longer, but that means we know the medicine is going to get there because who knows how long this blizzard is going to last, right? So Sep and Togo's team of dogs, he was like, all right, look here. Because I am the greatest musher in Alaska, I'm going to go get that medicine. Let's go to the map because we need to appreciate what this guy was actually thinking about. All right, so here we go. Map screen. And if somebody could shoot me a little text-a-roo just to let me know or a chat so I know that is showing my pile of toys. And, oh, good, thank you. This is my little adorable toy Balto. Look at him. Look at him. So cute. So Balto's team, with Balto at the lead, I'm going to put him right down there, Steve, buddy. They were way over here in the town called Bluff, really close to Nome. The medicine was way over there in a town called Nenana. Now, because I'm in Ohio, to give an appreciation to Ohio kids how far away this was, here's a little map of Ohio that when you're comparing it to this whole Alaska map, it's to scale. It's the right scale. So if I were to hold up Ohio, that's 1 Ohio's, 2 Ohio's, 3 Ohio's. These guys were asking Seppala, way over here, to mush. Originally, he said, I'm going to go all the way. Togo's going to lead me down, all the way over here and get the medicine. And then I'm going to turn around and we're going to bring it all the way back. You guys, this is 674 miles across this in a terrible blizzard. And check it out. Poor Togo was 12 years old. He was already a senior citizen dog. So yeah, this was amazing that Seppala was going to try and do this. And the mayor who was down here was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure that Sepp is going to try and do this crazy thing. How about this? Let's back him up. And we're going to get a bunch of volunteers to all be ready at each one of these stations. Because there were dudes and dogs all along here, man. And he said, you guys all be ready. And when the first guy books out of here and he makes it to the next town, then you hand it off so the next guy can go. And that way, nobody was trying to go the whole distance by themselves. Because that would be pretty ridiculous to try and go in that horrible, dangerous blizzard the whole distance. Right. So now we've got this amazing thing going, and nobody knew what anybody else was doing. Because remember, no phones. Nobody was there with a film crew. It was just beep, 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 at each trail stop. And that's why all of those pictures from the newspapers were such a big deal, because nobody knew what was going on. So as each musher slid into the next town, exhausted, covered with snow, his dog panting and gasping because it was so cold, he'd say, oh, it was so horrible out there. This was the worst blizzard ever I had. I froze my fingers. I got hypothermia. And they would bring the medicine in for just a couple minutes to get it warmed up, because if it stayed frozen for too long, it wouldn't work right. And then they'd give it to the next guy. That was smart. Famous relay. So today, there are 20 men who are considered all the heroes of Nome. There were over 150 dogs. All those different dogs teams that made it through this terrible blizzard too. But we haven't even mentioned Balto yet, because he was still waiting his turn. So as this relay is going on, Sep and Togo are heading out, trying to get there, trying to get all the way, and it was almost like a total fail, like fail in capital letters, all fail. Allow me to show you how close this fail might have been. Because remember now, these guys are zooming along in a terrible blizzard, not really able to see what the heck is going on, trusting their dogs to get them there. And, dramatic zoom in. I can't lose Nome. Oh, there we go. Okay. So all these other mushers are helping to bring the medicine from, here comes Sep and Togo, this way. All these guys are coming this way. And it's taken them about 4.5 days to fight their way through this terrible blizzard. And then right about here, next to this edge of ocean called the Norton Sound, kind of an amazing thing happened, is that Togo, leading his team, they had already scooted across the frozen oceans, and they were right about here, and all of a sudden, they see another dog sled with the dogs are all tangled up and barking, and the mushers yelling, hey, I've got the serum right here, stop. And whoa, Seppala just happened to run into the other musher who had the medicine. His name was Henry. I know exactly, gasp is the way it goes. So, man, Sep says, give me the medicine, I'm out of here. And he said, Togo, go home, and they take off. And so Togo turns around, and they head back. Now, please keep in mind, Togo is 12 years old. He's a senior citizen dog. He's already taken his team 150 miles in this blizzard, and now his boss is telling him, go all the way back? Oh, poor old Togo. So he made it across this frozen chunk of ocean just in time, man. The ocean was starting to break up, and they knew it was a big maybe, but he made it. And in the Togo movie, they show, oh darn, did I turn my camera off again? See all those little controls right next to each other. In the Togo movie, they show the ice breaking up and how Sepp had to toss Togo across a chunk of water so he could land on another piece of ice and get the ice back together again. That did happen for real, but it didn't happen now, like in this story I'm telling. It happened a couple years earlier. But that's just an example of how amazing a dog Togo is. So they finally make it to the next town, and that's when Togo just sat down and he looked at Sepp like, I'm sorry, man. I'm done. I'm so tired. And Sepp didn't want to kill his poor dog, making this old guy run so far. So he said, okay, buddy, we're going to pass the medicine on to the next musher. That's all right. And we'll get to know him when we can. But we want to make sure this medicine gets there. Smart guy, right? So 2 more mushers, and then finally, Balto's turn comes. And he's waiting with his team. They get the medicine. They take off for the next town, and they blow right past it. It was so snowy and so wintry, and the blizzard was so awful. He didn't even see it. He's like, whoops. He's like, weren't we supposed to hit there by now? What's going on? And poor Balto was still cruising around, running through the snow. And Kaysen couldn't see anything. So he was just saying, find the trail, go dogs. And Balto and another dog named Fox, remember they were kind of leaning against each other because they're buddies? They were both pulling together like this, side by side, as team leaders for the team. But Fox kept dropping back like he couldn't figure out where they were going. And Balto was like, come on, I know where I'm going. So Kaysen finally let him take the lead. And then when they got to the town where they were supposed to stop, the other musher wasn't ready. All the dogs were just sleeping, So Kaysen was like, well, let's just keep going because we only have like 20 miles to go. And then the sled blew over. Wow, this huge blood. These dogs were so tired they couldn't fight it. And when the sled blew over, he had to take his gloves off and dig around in the snow to try and find that medicine. He frostbit his fingers terribly. He finally found it, though. Lucky! Put it back on the sled, strapped it down. Go, Balto, go! They take off again. And then all of a sudden, Balto stops. And he won't go any farther. And Kaysen is yelling at him, let's go, mush. And Balto's like, nope, not going anywhere. So Kaysen finally got out, like, what's up, dog? What's going on? And Balto's paws, swoosh, had broken through the ice, and he was standing in the frozen Topkok River. He had stopped just in time to save that sled from going into the river and dooming everybody, right? Man, Kaysen's like, oh, good boy. And pulls them out of the snow and wipes them off. Let's go. So they finally get going, and they made it, man. It was 5:30 in the morning, and nobody expected them. And it had only been 5.5 days since all those teams left Nenana, 674 miles away. So everybody's sleeping. And they come sliding into town and nobody's awake. So Kaysen jumps off the sled and runs over and bam, knocks on the hospital door and says, hey, I got the medicine. The doctor's like, what? And so he takes the box and says, who are you? And Kaysen just ran back out into the snow. And what all the townspeople saw as they were all getting up and looking out their windows, like, who's making all the ruckus? Because these dogs are all out there. And they see this totally snow-covered guy leaning down next to this little black dog. This is what he actually said. He's petting this little black dog, and he's going, damn fine dog. And he was pulling big bloody chunks of ice out of Balto's 4 torn up paws. Oh, man. So everybody in the next morning, they're all coming out of their houses. The doctor's giving shots to all the kids. They're like, whoa, you saved the town. You guys are heroes. This is great. And a French film team happened to be hanging around, because they wanted to catch the big approach, like, here come the heroes. But they missed it, because that's 5:30 in the morning. And they said, Mr. Kaysen, we know you're all cold and tired and stuff, but would you mind taking your dogs back down the street there so we can show the world how exciting this was? And Kaysen said, yeah, sure, I can do that. Here we go, guys. This is the little tiny clip of video. I'll wait till it's up there. There we go, a little tiny clip of video of Balto and Gunnar Kaysen, and they're recreating the moment where they came into Nome. So you can see the words up on the screen there. It says it was 5:30 in the morning, too dark for photographs. Later that day, the delivery of the serum to Dr. Welsh was recreated. French newsreel movie. Want to speak some French? There you go. I'll transport it in a traverse. And look, that's the real Balto. It's an actual video of him. Look at him. There he is in the front of the team. I can just imagine them going, earth as they're coming down. Notice how the blizzard had died down just in time, right? Poor dogs. And they come cruising down the main street. There's Mr. Kaysen carrying the package again. And there's Dr. Welsh saying, oh, my goodness, thank you so much for bringing us this medicine. This is great. And, yeah, there's a little boy getting a shot in his rear end. Thank you for being the brave little boy in that video, you know. So once the French film team had made this little film, there's Mr. Kaysen in his big fuzzy hat saying, oh, it was nothing. Oh, it was pretty rough, but, you know, here I am. I'm happy. After they made this film and they released it down into some theaters in the rest of the United States, there's Balto and Fox right next to each other. Look at them. He was so excited. And he was only 6 years old. He was a very healthy young pup, so he was like, this is no problem at all. I can handle this. And let's, oh, are you kidding me? Here, I've been telling this story for so many years, and I still cry when I'm telling it, because it's a cool story, man. These dogs are amazing. Ooh, and I have one more little video clip for you guys. Right? You got to see this, because then what happened was Mr. Seppala said, hold on, I got an idea. Since everybody here in the United States is like, ooh, cool, dogs, heroes, we want to meet them, yay. They decided to send the dogs on kind of a rock star tour around the United States by train. And they said, all right, we'll put the dogs on a boat. Kaysen, you go with them, you know, keep them in check. So this guy and 13 dogs all get on a boat, and they come down and they start cruising around the United States. So I want to show you a little clip of a video where they were getting ready to go on their rock star tour. Let's jump back in that little PowerPoint there. Not that one, you already saw that one. So here's the idea, my friends. They went from Nome, Alaska. And Jen, give me a thumbs up on that. I want to make sure I got my screen shared properly. Can you see that little map right there? We good? I think we are. I'm going to go for it. And then they said, all right, well, thanks, Kira. All right, get down there. They took the boat. They went all the way down there. And they got off the port in Seattle, Washington. And then they kind of went all over the United States by train for the next 2 years. That must have been a pretty weird time for Balto. Here, let me show you. Let me back all these arrows up to show you what it looks like. Ooh, that's the other. There's all the. Oh, I forgot. I have these still pictures first. Sorry, you guys. I didn't mean to make y'all dizzy changing my screens. There's a picture of Balto and Mr. Kaysen on the deck of the ship that brought them down to Seattle, Washington. And they look a little surprised because the kind of cameras they had back then had that great. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of an old-timey camera with that strip of gunpowder and it goes poof and it made a big flash. So it probably startled both of them when it went off. And Balto was such a good-looking little guy. He was a good-looking dog. Everybody really enjoyed meeting him. He was a well-behaved dog. Everybody said, man, this dog is calm. He's not like all the other huskies that are barking and acting all crazy. Look at this. They even cleaned him up and let him pose in a hotel in California while he was doing all of these wonderful public events. And for 2 years, that was his job. That's what he did, was he cruised all around the United States, and everybody got to meet him, and they thought that was pretty sweet. Oh, yeah, I knew I had a video. Play this. So here's a little clip of Gunnar Kaysen, and they spelled his name wrong on that screen. It's Kassen. But there he is, all cleaned up, walking Balto and the crew. There's Balto out in the front, and Fox, too, as his team lead. And this was just an example of them, what they were doing for the next 2 years, is just hanging out and showing off the dogs, letting people pet them, letting people understand how cool dog sledding is. Balto looks pretty hot in this video. He's panting a lot because, you know, he's used to being up in Alaska where it's cold. And then something happened that kind of annoyed Seth. Annoyed him so much. Well, he's asking, were they happy? I bet you these dogs were probably pretty bored at this point because, you know, they're used to working. Sled dogs are raised to pull sleds, not just stand around in the hot weather all the time. So my vote is the dogs were not having a very good time at this point. But Kaysen thought they were going to go back to Alaska. He was totally prepared. He was like, yeah, we'll do this for a couple of years, and then we'll go back to our regular jobs. See that statue? That's in New York City today. And it was sculpted to look like Balto. But some of the metals on the dog's, the statue dog's body, they were actually copied after some of Togo's metals. At this point, Seth, who owned Balto, got mad. He's like, hey, my old dog Togo almost killed himself trying to make that run and get that medicine there, and this little twerp Balto, a little 6-year-old pup, he's getting all the hoopla. That's not fair. Look how good. Yeah, so Seth kind of did a mean thing. I don't think he really meant it in a mean way, but he was just trying to make sure that Togo got appreciated. is he told Kaysen, you need to leave those dogs behind and get back up here, get your hiney back up here to Alaska, get back to your regular job. I don't want to pay to ship those dogs back up here. So you get back up here because we're shutting this down. And he took over. He brought Togo and his team down to the rest of the U.S. and started cruising around the U.S. to show off his dogs. So poor Balto and the last remaining dogs with his crew, because slowly they had been getting sold off. Some of them died of old age. There were only 7 of them left, Balto and 6 buddies. They ended up getting purchased by a guy named Sam Houston. And you're seeing a picture of his little museum. But it's more like a circus. He called it a museum because he had some exhibits like taxiderm snakes and alligators and things that not everybody got to see. He was over in Los Angeles, California, where there was a lot of fun showmanship going on. And he bought Balto and his 6 buddies. And those dogs' names were Billy, Tilly, Fi, Old Mock Talk, Fox, and Alaska Slim. So he had Balto and he had those other 6 dogs, and he was showing them on a stage. And he wasn't taking very good care of them. Now, what you're seeing up on the screen right now is a picture of a contract. And I want you to look very carefully on your eyeballs. I'm going to see if I can get my little arrow. So it says February 28th, 1927. So see, Balto's been on because he rescued the kids in 25. It's been 2 years. And it says that he's going to take, this guy wants $1,500 to buy Balto's team and his sled and everything to give them to the Balto Committee of Cleveland, Ohio. Well, guess what? That did not exist. Oops, get my camera back on. There was no such thing as the Balto Committee of Cleveland. What it was one guy. Hold on, Jen, I'll get that question in a second. There was one guy named George Kimball, and he was a business guy from Cleveland. Happened to be over on the West Coast doing business, and he was bored one Saturday evening, and he went to pay his dime, go to this little museum, go see some snakes and jugglers. And during the time that he was at that little museum, all of a sudden on the stage, they're like, ladies and gentlemen, presenting Balto, famous dog from the north. And they bring out Balto and the rest of his buddies, the 6 other dogs, and they're just sitting there on the stage. And everyone's like, yay, that's nice, cool, that's Balto, all right, bring back the snakes. And then they take Balto back off the stage, and they just threw him in a cage. And he and his 6 buddies were just sitting in a cage. And this guy named George from Cleveland, he was like, hey, that's not cool. That's a famous dog, and he needs exercise, and I don't like this. Can I buy him? And that's when Sam said, nah, kid, you got to buy all 7 of these dogs, because I can't make any money without Balto, and I want $1,500. And he was like, whoa, that's a lot of money. Jen, I think we tabulated that out. Wasn't it like $7,500 back then? Yeah, he wanted a lot of money. And so poor George was like, aw, I want to leave Balto here, but it's like, hold on, give me 10 days, and I'll go back to Cleveland and see if I can do a little fundraiser maybe, some people, and we'll see if I can buy Balto and bring him back to Cleveland. So Sam was like, yeah, sure, kid, get out of here, you bother me. So they wrote up that contract, and you guys, this was the big race, right? The next race, the race to save Balto. He only had 10 days to do it. Oh, man. Well, guess what? Cleveland went dog crazy, man. This little ad that you're seeing up on the screen, and you can see George's name down there in the bottom left where it says mail to George Kimball. And the whole town went nuts. And they were like, yeah, let's do this, man. Let's save Balto because he's being mistreated. And they did it. They saved not only the $1,500 to buy the dogs from Sam, but the city also saved an extra $500 so they could buy the dogs a train ticket and they could ride a train back to Cleveland. And look at all these headlines. I mean, I'm not kidding, man. People were super excited about this. This was like the first GoFundMe campaign. Recently, I just found this out. Jen, you might not even know this yet. I just found out that Los Angeles heard about this. The city of Los Angeles was like, wait, no, we want him. And there was like a race because they were saving money and we were saving money. And after just 10 days, Cleveland won. And we saved enough money, to buy Balto and rescue him from that circus. So the dogs got to ride on a train all the way across the whole country again. And they ended up, well, they had to ride in a baggage car because they were dogs. But, and they finally got back over here to Cleveland, Ohio, and we had a party. I met a lady who was 100 years old. Just a couple of years ago, I was telling this story. She had her residence home. And she came and told me that she was a little girl when Balto was brought to Cleveland. And I'm going to show you right now There was a parade, and she was at this parade, you guys. It was so exciting for me to meet a lady who was actually here in this black and white video as a little kid. And she was one of the little kids who helped to save Balto by donating her lunch money. Isn't that cool? There were a lot of kids here in Cleveland that donated their lunch money. So the video you're seeing is Balto and his team. It was kind of a rainy day in March when they finally, it was March 14th, if you want to write that date down, March 14th, 1927, when they brought all those dogs to Cleveland. And it was noted that this was the first time in history of, cool here. You can celebrate Balto's Day in Cleveland, too. That's fun. And the thing, I'll say March 19th. I apologize. I was double checking. One thing I can do really well is memorize stories, but I don't memorize numbers well. So I was double checking. Let me get that off the screen here. I was double my dates in the pamphlet because I love to tell the story, but I don't want to give you guys wrong information. Allow me to just double check that. March 19th. Sorry, 1927. Close enough. They brought Balto and his team to Cleveland. Ta-da! And they got to live at the zoo, which I think is kind of hilarious because for a couple of huskies who were used to run around Alaska, now they're smelling giraffes and like zebras and elephants and stuff. It must have been fascinating. And people could come to the zoo, and they weren't just in a cage at the zoo. They had a nice big grassy play area. So they could romp around in the grass, and people were allowed to go in and play with them. That's where Balto lived for the rest of his life. 6 whole years, half his life, right? Because he'd only been 6 years old at the time of the Serum Run. He got to party in Cleveland at the zoo, which I think is pretty cool. And there's a picture I'm putting up right now of the Brookside Park. That's what the Cleveland Zoo used to be called because it was next to a brook. It was called Brookside. There you go. Now you guys know why a famous dog from Alaska is in Cleveland. And then when Balto died of old age, because, all good dogs eventually do, the other dogs have been buried just respectfully on the zoo grounds. But because Balto's name was so known, it was such an amazing story of people and dogs rescuing kids, and then kids rescuing dogs. What a cool story. Somebody said, hey, wait, let's not just bury him. Can we keep him as an exhibit? And probably the discussion was like, well, I don't know. Do you think people would want to see a dog like that? I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. And guess what? They were right. Because people come to our museum from all over the whole world to see Balto and say, well, this is one of the coolest stories I've ever heard about dogs. Now, they did stuff him. Yeah, taxidermy is the fancy way to say stuffing, which means preserving the dog's body. So, it looks like he was alive. And I'm showing some pictures right now of Togo because Togo wrote a book. Well, I don't know if he actually wrote the book, but the lady in the picture there, that's where Togo, he retired at her resort up in Maine, and she wrote a book called Togo's Fireside Reflections. It's really hard to find copies of that book. Not many of them were printed, but that's kind of fun. So we know that Togo got remembered too. Check it out. He got a bubblegum card. That's pretty fun. So there's Togo's bubblegum card with a picture of Leonard Seppala too. And I do have a little bit of video of Togo and Leonard Seppala. And I want you guys to see how buddies they were. I want to see if I can jump to the part of the video where you're actually seeing. Let's see, where is it? Hold on. Oh, there it is. There, right there. So you can see Togo and Leonard Seppala as buddies. There they are. Posing. You can see Togo has a little bit of a bent ear right there. That was one of his little, how you could recognize him from the other dogs. So Sepp and Togo did finally get, recognized all across the country as the heroes they were too. But Balto has really remained the spokes dog for the whole adventure because he was the one leading the team that actually made it into Nome. And that's how we explain it to all kids who ask us questions about, why isn't Togo famous? We're like, he is. He is. It's just that Balto's name got remembered first, and we try to correct that when we teach the story. Make sure that everybody knows that both of those dogs are amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, oh my gosh, I know I've been doing all the talking. Jen has been typing like a madwoman over there answering chats. I'm going to open the chat back up again so I can see it. And if anybody has a question that didn't get answered yet, I am delighted to help out. I know I'm watching the time since we had about, 10 minutes till 4 my time. But I'm happy to hang with you if anybody has a question that I didn't answer during my story. I'm looking over there now and I see I have a new one. Does that mean a new question?
Aaron has a new question.
Lay it on me. Let's hear it. Well, I guess not hear it. Let's see it. And now I'm typing super fast to try.
How old was Balto when he died?
Good question. Balto lived to be 14 years old, which is pretty doggone old. Get that? That's a pun. Doggone old for a dog. And Togo lived to be 16. So he lived a super long time for a husky.
Wow, that's old for a big dog.
Oh.
Did Togo live somewhere else other than Alaska?
Yeah, thanks, Mally. I finally got the chat back up again so I can see it down there. And my screen, it's over here. That's right backwards on here. Nope, Togo lived in Alaska most of his life. He did tour the United States for a couple of months. But because he was so tired from the Serum Run and he was getting old, Seppala decided to let him retire up in Maine, which is a state way to the northeast in the United States. And he got to just hang out and live with that lady named Elizabeth for the last 2 years of his life.
Excellent.
Elaine, how do you train a dog? But I've never owned any dogs. I own cats instead. And there's a cat right now who's being super lazy up here. I can show him to you if he would wake up. I don't know if he's going to wake up or not. But his name is Tabasco, and I train him to do tricks. And the reason why he does tricks is because he wants treats. So he learns tricks because he's treat motivated. I can try and show him to you, but he's being very lazy right now. Go ahead and throw, if there's another question popping up or two, feel free to yell at me while I turn my little quick time player thing back on. And see if you can spot my buddy Tabasco. Back that up a little bit. It's up there. Hey, Tabasco. Hey, buddy. Would you like to see your fan club? Hey, man. Lazy cat. Let's move this. You can see there's a cat tree holding up my Alaska map. Excuse me, lazy lady. Yoo-hoo. Hello. Come on, lazy cat. Whoa, come here. You see him? I'm going to turn it around. There he is. Here's my lazy cat up on top of the tree. You gotta turn. Oh. There he is. No. Typical cat. He's like, no, it's okay. They don't have to see me. I'm tired. He does love this. Oh. Give me that. I totally want that Balto toy. Man. Okay. How about that for a silly way to end the program? Cat versus dog.
That's kind. They kind of look the same.
Doesn't he? He's got Balto. I know he's got Balto coloration. It's great.
They kind of look the same. Well, I think that we enjoyed seeing your cat, and that's an amazing. There goes Tabasco. He knocked him off.
Oh.
There. Oh, that's hilarious.
He's out of here. Whoa. You gonna climb down? Go ahead, buddy. He's like, what do I do with this dog now? Hold on. You gonna come down? Come on. He goes, taking his kill. Now you've all seen the true ending of the Balto story. Oh! Attacked by a giant cat. That's embarrassing. Silly.
So, Lee, thank you so much for telling that story. It's always inspirational to hear that. And, Elena wants to know, why did they use the dogs to get the medicine there?
Ooh, great
question.
If it happened in the winter or in the summertime, there wouldn't even be a Balto story because they could have just taken it by airplane. They could have flown over there in only a couple of hours and been done. But because it was such a horrible blizzard going on, the only way to travel was by dog sled. That was it, man. They couldn't even see where they were going. It was so bad. They would just relied on the dogs to smell the trail. Yeah, so that's an amazing thing about this story is the timing of it. If the blizzard hadn't happened, if it happened in the summertime, it would be a totally different story.
That is so true. And it's such an inspirational story and just shows that dogs can be heroes too. And he worked hard and he's a beautiful dog. So thank you so much for sharing that amazing story. So we're going to go now, but we hope that some of you will come back for the squid dissection with Alaska, with Darren, and also at 8 o'clock tonight. Lee, what time is it at 8 o'clock tonight? What's happening at 8 o'clock tonight?
8 o'clock tonight, my friends. Very exciting Star Wars trivia night with a famous international Star Wars trivia expert. And I don't know if Mally still has the pictures of my car, but I'll try to feature a picture of my car because I have Star Wars stickers all over my car.
And you don't have to know anything about Star Wars to enjoy Andy. He's a lot of fun. And it'll maybe inspire you to see some of the great movies of all time. So thank you so much, Lee. And I encourage you guys to see if you can. You can see Togo and see all the movies. Really, guys. And we'll see you later.
Bye, everybody.